Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? As we get settled, just kind of show of hands, who here loves the term centralization? Couple. Who here hates the term centralization? Got one or two. So no matter if you're on one end or the other, it's an important topic. So we got a great panel here to unpack this today. Another show of hands, who here was in the session yesterday on centralization? Okay, cool. Premise of the sessions that we've had at RETCON is yesterday was all about kind of optimizing, fine-tuning centralization operations for those that have already installed it widely across their organizations. Premise for today, for this panel, is more if you're on the earlier side of that journey. So if you're thinking about or thinking of expanding within, so this panel has agreed to come share their perspectives, lessons learned, some actionable takeaways. So as you're looking to incorporate centralization into your organizations, you should walk away with a lot of great things to take back into the office. So that's our charge. That's what we're here to accomplish. Like he mentioned, I'm Sean Forster. I'm an industry principal at Appfolio, and I'm the moderator for today's discussion. And I'll ask our panelists to introduce themselves. And as you do, kind of a quick question, so don't elaborate, but I want you to tell this audience, do you consider centralization to be more of a change management project or a technology project? So we'll start with Jackie.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Jackie Ware. I'm based out of Alpharetta, Georgia. I work on the CEO of Pegasus Residential. We are a third-party management company managing about 50,000 units across 13 different states, primarily in the Sun Belt. To answer your question, I truly believe, it could go either way, but I would say change management.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Ruchir.
Hey everyone, my name is Ruchir. I am the founder and CEO of Front Desk AI. It is an AI workforce for multifamily, handles phone calls, text messages, emails, things like that. To answer the question, I'm a little bit biased, but I would say technology. In terms of my background, I've done AI research at UC Berkeley. I worked at Meta as an engineer. And then ended up starting this company and left the Silicon Valley and joined the multifamily world because I was really excited to bring AI to real estate. So happy to provide any tech or AI perspectives to the panel.
Great. Thank you for being here. And Maja.
Hi, everybody. My name is Maja Sofic. I am with CIM Group. We're a developer operator, but primarily an investment company, and we operate and manage various asset types from multifamily, office, and residential across the United States. We also have some small footprint into Europe and Latin America as well. And to answer your question, I would say a little bit of both, right?
All right. I guess we'll allow that. And last but certainly not least, Frank.
Hey everyone, Frank McAdams, Veris Residential. We are a Class A multifamily owner-operator based out of New Jersey with properties in New Jersey and Massachusetts. And I would say technology is the way to get to centralization more successfully and quicker. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here as well. And before I get into the questions, I just learned before coming on stage, this is actually Frank and Ruchir's first panel. So let's give them another round of applause for being here. We promise we won't haze till afterwards. But I want to start with assessing operational readiness. And Maja, I'd like to start with you on this question. What are the signals that tell you an organization, or what we should be looking at within the four walls, that tell you that you're truly ready to centralize? What it's the culture, the operations, the technology. What should operators look for?
I think you can truly tell an organization is ready kind of when all three things, right, cultural, organization, and technology-wise come together. I think on the cultural side, it's when leadership and your kind of regional and local leadership recognizes that there is a bigger task at hand here, right? They stop kind of defending their regional exceptions, but we've always done it this way. Or, here in this part of the country or the state, we do it that way. There's a bigger goal at hand here, and truly the enterprise outcome is the most important one. I think basically when you start getting that buy-in and the willingness to align on the big common goal, that's kind of when that happened in shift in your culture happens, right? I think operationally, you have to see that pain is very visible and repeatable, right? Teams are struggling. There's rework, delays, constant issues. Your teams can all name it. I assume, and mine can as well. And I think at that time, centralization is not theoretical anymore, but it comes just a natural evolving kind of thing, right?
So I'm hearing kind of two things there. There's one, it's like how to make sure everyone's aligned on it, and two, how does it like actually identifying a pain point where this could be a part of the solution.
Correct.
Now, I imagine you don't just wait for those things to magically happen on their own. Is there anything that as a leader or just someone who's interested in this topic can do to really drive that change or kind of make that, have some urgency to it?
Absolutely. I think, again, it's very important, in my opinion, to get everybody together and get your kind of regional leaderships kind of buy-in, make sure they feel involved and like they have a voice, right?
Yeah.
And then also do your research. We've been kind of, let's say, semi-centralizing over a course of many years now, but with a bigger, I would say, urgency kind of recently in the last 2 years. And you need to do your research, your analysis. I think we shared when we had our conversation, for example, on the AP side. We've sat down and analyzed, the living life out of every invoice and every workflow and every, even to the point of how long does it take to manually code an invoice? How long does it take to get through it all from, your starting point to your end point? And we were like, oh, okay, this is great. Well, we have all this down. Our little Excel spreadsheet did the work. We need, call it maybe 2.5 FTEs to centralize, mind you, across our whole multifamily portfolio. And guess what happened? It was a bust. We didn't, you know what I mean? But it's okay, right?
Yeah.
We got that. We learned from that. And then you're going to love this. Technology chimed in.
Good.
We partnered up with our IT department and we were like, okay, we need a solution. Let's find it and find it fast. And we did. And here we are, call it maybe 3 to 4 months barely after that. It is amazing. It is
Great.
Working like a charm. We are doing this. We've cut our invoice processing time from front to the end by the time you release the payment from, I would say, I think about 13.2 days to about 6.7 days, if I'm not mistaken, just in a span of 90 days. So
That's
yes,
great.
to confirm the initial technology is very important.
Yeah. So you solved the pain there. Jackie, Frank, love to get your perspective as operators. What are the other things that you look to as signal that your organization may be ready to centralize?
Yeah, when you're going through the journey that you just were describing, when I think about security deposits specifically, we'll use that as one of the kind of bite-sized things that we did. We centralized it first to our corporate headquarters, and that was our start, right? We took it off the site teams and did it there, and then we took it one step further recently, and that, I will say, technology cut it down dramatically. We even in 2026, we're sending paper checks, and we were kind of tied by some of the issues that our municipalities required us to do with having certified funds and proof of delivery for checks and everything. It was crazy. But now, we found a partner that we're working with. We're working with Rentable, and they made it really easy, and they kind of did a lot of the legwork for us. And I think people could be surprised to know that it also doesn't have to be too much of a lift, and it doesn't have to also be very expensive to use technology to get these things stood up. And it can happen quickly. You said 90 days. We did the same thing.
There you go, right?
We actually sped up our timeline to do our entire portfolio, and we had the whole thing done by the end of Q1, and it's been fantastic. But yeah, the starting small and just taking the little pieces. I love that you did the whole Excel sheet
We did,
of all
yeah.
the time.
We
And
did.
in my mind,
did.
I'm like, as VP of innovation, I want to just move fast and learn from it, but go. And I'm like,
Same.
I would have not sat there and had a whole spreadsheet
Well, okay,
of hours.
can I just chime in? Maybe it wasn't me actually that sat down, but
But having someone, I think, like having that transparency, sharing as you go along, something that's come up, and if you've done any type of change management that's hard, it's having that communication early, like you had mentioned, and continuing and kind of reporting back. This is what we learned this hour, Justine. Jack, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I mean, those were great insights. The only thing I'd add to that is, one, you have to have the people ready to go. We use all of the people that we have for centralized when we were ready to start. We're all seasoned managers with our organization. So they knew how to work everything. So everything could be accurate. Because the last thing you want is to have it centralized and then the people that are centralized aren't doing the information correctly. So we really wanted to make sure we did, and we still to this day, we only hire internally for the position. They have to be a well-seasoned manager with our company in order to take this position. And also, just a little fun tip for you guys, if you do it that way, that's what's worked for us. They usually have to now, we were paying them, and when we started it, we, kept all their salaries the same. Well, it's a much better job for them. So you can decrease the salary a little bit because you're going to take it on as a corporate expense, because they are no longer client facing and they're no longer facing your residents either. And you want to make sure you have the infrastructure. Really think about what things can I centralize that can be done through our systems. And we have so much great technology. That has really helped us. So we actually offer ours as an a la carte service for our sites, depending on what they need. They don't all need the same type of centralization, in our opinion, because you have some that we use it for transitions when we're having a bunch of new people at the site, the managers maybe learning how to manage them, learning the property, and we'll keep it on for, let's say, 60 days, 90 days until everybody's trained up. We have it for lease ups where they really just need it for application approvals. Hopefully you have so many leases coming in, you need help with that because it's a huge admin burden for your teams. So it really depends on the needs of that property. And we've seen a ton of success. I should have started with this, but our organization, 50,000 units, and we have about 37% of our portfolio is operating on centralized. I'd like it to be 100% because we have better accuracy. They're just more efficient, and our people can do anywhere. They can be over about 5 to 7 properties, is how we have them when they're in their little a la carte. They have to pick 4 things. But it's working really, really well for us.
Wonderful. Now, technology has been brought up, I think, in each of your answers. And so for my next question, I'm going to start with you, Ruchir, because I think technology is going to be a big part of this answer here. But centralization, not a new topic as an industry. I feel like we've been talking about this 10 years, 15 years. It's been a while. But if you're starting now or looking at increasing your centralization, I think it's important to say, hey, what's new about starting in 2026 than from prior years? So, Ruchir, just curious, what do you think has changed? And how does that change the importance of getting that foundation right and the systems that you do to support centralization?
Yeah, totally. And I think there's been a massive shift in the last few years around the way we talk about centralization. I think pre-AI, at least, the conversation was primarily centered, I was about to say centralized, centered around labor. And how do we get the roles that are currently at our different units, buildings, back into the right office? And how do we get those people to be elevated and work on the right things? Now I'm seeing the conversation is starting to evolve into, well, how do we centralize our data? How do we centralize our software? Mm-hmm. And every single building has different people that are doing different things that like different software. And gosh, how do we align all of them to now use a new process? And it was incredibly difficult to do that pre-AI, and I'll explain why. But post-AI, there's now this new wave of multifamily operators who are saying, hey, we can just have one AI agent across every single building that manages everything, and now we've centralized our software. And so the reason I think this is happening is because pre-AI, it was people that were managing all of the processes, and the software was just storing the data. And every person had a different preference of their software, and it was impossible to centralize. And post-AI, it's the AI that's doing the work, right? The AI is picking up the phone and handling the leasing call. The AI is responding to an email, answering about a pet policy. And so because it's one AI that's doing all the work, the one AI can also centralize storing all the work, which then means you can get rid of having 15 different point solutions that are kind of duct taped together and don't really connect and no one knows how to fix it, into having one AI agent across all channels that's just managing everything in according to the SOPs that you have set out.
Yeah, I think centralization has always been around specialization. It's like, hey, the work needs to get done where it matters, where it actually gets done. You know, you can kind of have some conversation around, hey, this works better, more efficiently, and you can specialize roles. I think it's always been specialization and automation, and with AI, we have a new way to automate. Kind of go down the line just quickly. What do you think has changed for my operators on the panel around centralization now than when you guys embarked on your efforts?
So we've had our centralization rolled out since 2018. We got lucky, which I can't believe I'm going to say this, but with the pandemic, that it allowed us to really focus on it and really build it out a lot deeper. So it kind of forced us into, okay, we wanted to do it, we're kind of half doing it. All right, let's go all in right now. And it really helped us elevate that program. I think some of the things that are different is because for us, ours really changed. We thought it was going to look totally different than how it ended up with the menu of services that we offer. And we did think we were going to have a hard time with our operators being threatened by it, like our on-site teams. They love it because it makes their jobs so much easier, and their jobs are such a necessity. So we spent all this time worrying about that, and that was nothing to be worried about. Every property we have wants it. I think some of the differences now are really on, we offer two types of centralized. So we have our menu of services, things that can be done out of our corporate office. And then we also have a centralized management. So when we have dual people working at properties, and that's really where people can get the payroll savings. And that really excites them. So I guess having to continue to pivot, even though you've rolled it out, is what is a big change right now.
Yeah. In a couple words, Maja, Frank, anything you'd add to what's different now than maybe when you...
I would just say that I think now foundation is more important than ever because everything else that we're trying to do sits right on top of it, right? And if that's right, it makes it easy to pivot to this model, to that model. And just, you like, there's no end in sight. You can take it and make it something, whatever you want it to be, if your foundation is right.
Frank?
I would say lastly, I heard this in another panel this week that our industry is in a really kind of lucky era right now of having really good technology and new ideas. I mean, of course, everyone's talking about AI, but even before that really has, blown up in the past, we'll say maybe even a year, how much it's changed. But we're in a really good spot here to have technology to make things not only better for our site teams and our corporate employees, but also for our residents. So being able to leverage that and just kind of open up these, it creates more ideas for you when you have maybe a resident app that can do all the things that maybe you were doing previously with your old one. But now, as technology is so quickly adapting and changing and growing, you're now doing move-in checklists and doing all these other things and reservable amenities with tiered amenities and payments and stuff like that we just couldn't do before. And it's making the experience for our residents a lot better because it's more self-service. It's giving them an experience that they have in other facets of their life, maybe with their banking systems or their cars or anything else where they're using apps and have their own autonomy to do their own actions and make their own decisions. They can now kind of finally do that in our industry too, which has been kind of, I think, not always on the leading edge, but we're finally getting there, which has been great. Yeah.
Well, let's continue that line of thought around the resident experience. I think so much of centralization, we talk about impact to teams, how we're going to be more efficient as operators, but how do you use that potentially as an opportunity to not only make that it's not detracting from the resident experience, but actually making it a better resident experience for ultimately the most important stakeholder in our industry. They're the ones paying the rent that makes this all revolve. And I think, Ruchir, you have some data maybe you can bring to bear around resident experience. What's that looking like?
Yeah, totally. I run a company that builds AI receptionists. And so I should be biased here and tell you everyone loves AI receptionists, but it's not the case. I mean, I would rather talk to a person than talk to an AI as well. And so we at Front Desk, we spend a lot of time thinking about, do people even like talking to our thing, and what is their reaction, when they call it? And so, what we found is that it's significantly better than the alternative, and it may not be better than a human, for example, and maybe at some point it will. But as a multifamily operator, the current situation might be lack of processes. It might be a voicemail. Mm-hmm. And effectively, the data we've seen is that 80% of people that hit a voicemail just immediately call a competitor. Likewise, we've seen that there's sort of a generational gap happening within AI. So when we put one of our chatbots on a website, we ran a survey on what is the demographic of people that click that chatbot versus people that go and hit contact sales. And what we notice is that for the newer generations, Gen Z especially, it is significantly more tilted towards talking to a chatbot. And so, capturing 50 to 60% more leads just by implementing a simple AI chatbot, which, many vendors, including us, but others also will provide. And it's an easy lift for different generations. And so what we're seeing is that there is, of course, a bit of a blocker on people wanting to engage with AI. But when you do implement AI in the right places and it's specialized, as you said, and it's trained to the business and it gets the result, residents want the result. So if they get their work order taken care of, they get their, booking scheduled, or even if they have a payment delinquency and an AI calls them and reminds them and sends them the link, those are all cases where the resident maybe would have wanted to talk to a person, but it got the job done and it was better than a voicemail or having none of those workflows going.
Yeah, and I don't think it doesn't need to be an either or, right? Like I think with all of this, a lot of you'll hear around, hey, we're taking off some of this rote tasks, this busy work, so that we can focus on more in-depth relationship building, getting to know folks by their first name, those things that really matter when it comes to renewing properties, like feeling a sense of community. You build that through human relationships, and your teams can do more of that. That becomes more valuable if you're able to automate others. Jackie, what were you going to say?
For us, since we have a team of people running our centralized, like doing all the different pieces of it, we've seen great improvement on renewals. So that's something odd. It's not the person on site, it's a team. But what it is, it's the people that are centralized that know their undivided attention. They know how to use the system correctly. They also have been seasoned managers, so they know how to de-escalate the conversation. When you're talking about a renewal, you usually put in a maintenance request. And then if they're really upset, they have the time to talk them through that, to really understand, talk with the team. We require our teams to do daily huddles. The centralized support is also on the huddles with them. So they still are getting a flavor of what that property's like, what the demographic is needing, and what they need. But we've seen on average for renewals, they are renewing at like 67%, which is, higher than we budget for. And then in addition to that, they're getting about a 4% with our centralized because they can sell the property. They're seasoned. It's not just a new leasing agent who doesn't know the property either and is going ahead and trying to call the renewal to get them to lease. It's a better way. Same thing with delinquency. They're relentless. They're able to collect more. They aren't scared of having the conversations. It has really helped us. I don't have the numbers on delinquency, sorry guys, but it has helped my properties become much more efficient, and it keeps the resident retention. The people on site are happier. Because typically we try to hire these unicorns who are these managers who are bubbly and lease apartments and are social. And then we need them to be these great administrative people who are doing, you're a perfect executive summary, who are excellent at your invoicing. That person exists like 1 in 100. Like there's not that many of them. So it allows the people to focus on customer satisfaction because that's really their skill set. Nobody needs a great administrative manager. You really need someone that can be there with the people. And so that we've taken some of our people who maybe aren't as fun and put them in roles that they just love. They love to be that administrative piece and support.
Yeah, I think that's so great because that unicorn, to your point, you find people that are great, have a high EQ, they're able to do that. Yeah. Those that really love getting into the details, into process design, into kind of how we could be more efficient, have them do what they love there. And
if one of you's in the audience, I'll hire you.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Well, getting into the details, like Frank, I want to get you on this, like the systems, the workflows, the different governance structures that need to go into a successful centralization process. Walk us through kind of what scaffolding needs to be put in place as operators embark on this.
Sure, yeah. So for us, what has worked well in a number of the projects that we've done recently is and I mentioned it earlier, we did start small. We did little bite-sized projects here and there. We did our security deposit. We automated that. We automated all of our appointment tours and scheduling and follow-up. with Elise. In fact, we did that, and it's been going great. We've had that was maybe one of the first things that we kind of kicked off that really jump started us doing a lot more automation and a lot more, we'll call them kind of like mini systems to replace. But I think the biggest takeaway that we had is not only starting small and taking piece by piece, but kind of finding the fine line between letting, don't put the cart before the horse, so to speak, or however it is, right? Don't be afraid that you are over managing it and trying to over perfect it during the startup process, that you're now taking too long to roll this out. Everyone's now exhausted with the process and has like almost such high hopes because of how much labor has been put into it that it's almost gonna like, if it fails, it's gonna really fail. And I think that doesn't feel good, right? So give yourself the flexibility to be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is our plan for it. Let's roll it out. Let's get it stood up and let's see how it goes. Let's start with a couple of properties. Maybe we want to do an easy property and a hard property. I actually heard something in another panel this week that people were saying, when you want to test a new system, don't always test it with like your rock star team and your rock star property, because like, yeah, of course it's probably going to do really well, right? Like they're team players. They'll listen. They'll kind of do whatever it takes to get it to work, but like maybe that's not what you want. You kind of want to do it at the trickier properties and the trickier teams, because if they can do it and you got it all worked out, and with that client base at that property, for instance, then it's going to work and it's going to scale at all your other ones. But yeah, it's having the eye on the prize, but don't get caught up in the minutia. I like to kind of go fast and get things done and get it stood up, and then like we can reevaluate and take a breath, and before we move to the next phase, we'll perfect it again. But just don't get caught up in the minutia. It's not going to be. It'll be just kind of miserable for everyone, I think, if you do it that way.
Well, don't let perfection get in the way of progress, right? And I think that's from the panel yesterday. They've all centralized, and they're all still continuing to fine tune and see what works for them and iterate over time. So you're not going to get it completely dialed in and then able to execute on that. Maja, I saw you nod along to that. What are some of your thoughts around
absolutely agree with
infrastructure?
With everybody's that infrastructure has to be in place, and don't get caught up in. And you know what? It's going to fail, right? Like there's no way that everything's going to go perfect and every team is going to be happy, and every tool that you select or process that you need to expand upon is going to work. Absolutely not. But don't get caught up. Like keep your eye on the prize and just push forward. And as you're going along, perfect it, right? It's natural, I think.
Okay, so now I want to shift the conversation to centralization's impact on the roles within. And I think after this, we're going to have a little bit of time for a couple of questions. So if you have a question in mind, think of that. But for this portion, really want to think about, as centralization and AI matures, how are the roles of your teams evolving, whether that's the on-site team or the centralized teams? And as a follow-up, what are you doing to kind of elevate that role and make it a really, positive experience for all involved on your teams? Jackie, I'll start with you on this, as you kind of touched on that a bit on the distinction there.
I think something to keep in mind that we've learned, and the hard way, but that we've learned is that no matter what system you put in, and AI is amazing, you really have to still have somebody that manages it to make sure that it's being done properly. So you get the AI leasing agent, you get the AI for collections, you get it all, and then it just kind of flops, and you're like, oh, the system doesn't work. You must identify somebody who really owns the product, and I definitely agree with the recommendation from Frank. I mean, make sure you beta everything. Don't roll it out through your entire portfolio, even if you only have a couple of properties. You want to make sure you work out the kinks. That is key. For us, I mean, I guess that's my main advice, is make sure you have somebody. AI sounds like it's hands off, but it still requires, and you can dilute the amount of people that are involved, which is great, but you need somebody to manage the product to make sure it's working for you. Because if not, it won't work right.
Ruchir?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. And when we do our deployments, the phrase we like to use a lot is iteration, because unlike traditional software, AI is almost like training a person. And when you train a person, you have someone dedicated to training that person and up-leveling them and managing them. And a lot of times people will set and forget their AI agent, and it doesn't have the right information that it needs. And then, there's a lack of ownership on, well, who's going to find that information, data is in different silos, and that can lead to a failed deployment. And so fully agree on bringing people in that can own deployments like that, especially if it is involved in tech. On the point about what happens to on-site roles, I think the common thought is, hey, if we're building AI that does this stuff, it's going to replace the roles. And a lot of people say that. We strongly disagree with that. And we do think that there are opportunities to replace administrative work and to replace redundant work. But in terms of what the role becomes, we think that the role finally becomes what it was advertised to be, right? When you hire someone to manage your leasing, you're not hiring them to answer the same question about, I'll give the pet policy example, 72 times a week, right? And that was never in their job description. But they're probably currently doing that as a role. And so as you centralize and you implement AI tools that are taking your phone calls with AI, taking your text messages with AI, et cetera, the roles actually start to revert back into what they were initially meant to be. And then what we also see is that these tools and the process of centralizing creates so many efficiency gains, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, that new roles actually emerge from the added demand, right? Like we see that when we run an AI that's doing payment delinquency, and we cut payment delinquencies in half, and we run an AI that's doing leasing, and we start to reduce the vacancy rate, well, all of a sudden there's more stuff to do because there's more people and the building is more productive, and then you hire more roles. And so it's this sort of paradox where at first glance you might assume that the roles are going to completely evolve and change, and there's a ton of change management, don't get me wrong, to be done. But a lot of times the change management to be done is not around deleting roles, but really reverting roles to what they were meant to be, and then bringing on roles that then manage the new operations that have stemmed downstream from the changes that you've implemented.
Yeah, I mean, as an industry, we have more tasks than we know what to do with. I mean, we know we have to do the tasks, but we're focused on eliminating the tasks, and so that you can do more of the strategic work. We've done, our studies look at about 2/3 of time are spent on what we would consider busy work, about 1/3 on the more strategic high-level work. We could even get that 50-50, if not flipped, and ultimately 90% focus on that, and outsourcing to the AI, those rote types of tasks, that's a large opportunity. I think not every industry has the benefits that we have, where we're operating in the built environment. We're dealing with people's homes. People want to have a human relationship with something that's the most significant aspect of their payments each month. So not every industry, I think, is fortunate for that, but we can really honestly tell a story of up-leveling roles, upskilling roles. Maja and Frank, have you looked at, like Ruchir was mentioning, creating new types of roles focused on this? So, or are you looking, does it change the skill sets that you maybe are hiring for? Tell us a little bit about how roles have evolved at your organizations.
For us, I think it kind of changed it changed the narrative about work being processed to let's drive outcomes. Yeah. And I think it changed the skill set that we're looking for. Exactly, kind of to just build upon what you both said earlier, right? It's, that one manager that does it all, that, is great at financial reporting, knows how to do this, but can also put a smile on. And that is really a rare, unicorn. But this way you are able to hire the right person for that right skill set and kind of, let them do their thing and blossom. I think that's the kind of beauty of it, and that's kind of how we're looking at it. Yes, we've had roles evolve just because in the nature of centralization, is it, the AP side, the AR side. So in that terms, we've had various new roles evolve. But also I think the skill set piece is very important for us as well. Yeah.
One thing that stuck with me that I think, Jackie, you and I spoke about earlier was we saw, while we didn't necessarily see a reduction in, I say maybe total number of employees, we did see a big shift up in their responsibilities and their skill sets and, their position and their title. We have a centralization model right now that technology is helping us with, but the way our company is, we do have a number of high-rise towers are in a very centralized, call it maybe 5-6 block radius. So there was an opportunity there to shift many people up a notch, so to speak, by taking away a lot of the tasks, right? The administrative tasks that nobody wants to do anyway, but having these superstar leasing specialists, and we have our senior director of resident experience who's here as well. By taking all those like appointment scheduling and follow up, and monitoring the move-in checklists to make sure that the resident turned in all the stuff before they get their keys. By taking all that away and replacing it with technology, we were able to make this team oversee a couple of these high rises at the same time. Spend more time with residents. We happen to be a Class A portfolio, but this goes, for Class B and C as well. When people are coming to your clubhouse or your office to pick up their packages, it's much better for you to be able to stand up and greet them and say hi, and how's your dog, and how was the first day of kindergarten when you're handing out their packages, than you being inconvenienced because you're sitting there responding to emails and trying to generate reports and doing all these other things. And so in seeing this, for our case here, we have these people that are now even more promotable because they now can say, oh, I actually am a senior director of leasing or what have you for 1,200 units. And now look what I can do. I was able to take on so many more units, and not that I'm overworked, because I'm now actually just doing the things I like and I can focus on and not have to be bogged down by all the administrative tasks.
Yeah. So, something that we were talking about earlier, I would be in the people that kind of hate the term centralization, at least how it has become to be understood. Because centralization is something that is framed oftentimes as happening to the staff. Mm-hmm. And the way that you each described it, it's really, we're investing in the staff. We're growing your careers. We're developing you that skill set that is going to be increasingly valuable looking forward. So I think just reframing that kind of centralization has a little bit of a negative bias oftentimes when it really isn't, particularly in our industry. So have some time for questions. I got plenty if we don't have any from the audience that we can get to, but would want to open this up. Okay, if I can repeat, I heard on the maintenance side, how are we hiring within that, and how do we make the business case for centralization in maintenance? Either of you. And the hybrid model, yeah.
So floating.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we could speak to that. Yeah. I think I have a different experience, I think, than you guys had with it. Yeah. So we did try it we did try it recently. While there is good technology around it to keep your teams, organized, to have auto-assigned work orders. I know there's some good technology coming out right now that can geolocate where all your techs are, especially if you have a concentration of buildings or, huge garden style apartment communities, that you can really get people organized that way. When we were doing it, we tried to do it in the sense where we were hiring specialized technicians. So painters or HVAC or plumbers. And again, in that Jersey City example that we had, what just became a little tough for us was, learning all the different building systems and the different types of mechanicals that you may have at different buildings. So I think it does depend a little bit more portfolio specific. For leasing, it's a lot easier. You don't have physical tools that you have to access. You've got your tablet, you've got your phone, you can kind of do everything from anywhere. But when it's on maintenance, we were having a hard time because you have a different shop in each of the high rises. You've got different specialties, different teams that they now have to work with at each of the buildings. It was a little bit tough for us. And so we shifted our focus from there, and that's when we went really all in on the leasing side of things.
Yeah, I think on our end, I do agree with that. I think kind of the product type, right? If it's easier if it's just your high-rise buildings, if you have that luxury and ability to do that, or if it's just garden-style properties, because the maintenance of it is very similar, right? You'll have, these type of HVAC systems or roof units. It all depends. So I think if you have that luxury, it's easier to work through it that way. The way we've done is almost if we have a lot of, actually not a lot, but several properties that are kind of combined together, right? Like in Virginia, we have a 2,000 unit, I call it a small city, right? Because it's like these, several buildings, but very close together. So centralizing kind of maintenance in that sense is successful because it's all the same. It's very close and it works. But I think it becomes a bit more challenging if it's across, bigger mileage, right? Across it can pose challenges. However, we are focusing a lot on, and we're actually implementing technology that can help with, the location, the automatic tracking of the, appliances, warranties, serial numbers, and so on. I think that can definitely be helpful and a step in the right direction.
Yeah, probably not a starting point, like at the admin, the leasing, work your way in.
I think that's absolutely right.
Well, as we kind of approach the end of our time, I'd like to get each of you to kind of just, what's the one takeaway? Like, what's the most important thing as you went through your experience? What's the learning that you would like, folks that are considering or on early stage of the journey to take away from this session? Frank, I'll start with you and work backwards.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say it's just do one thing. Just do one thing. I think for myself, when I'm, trying to use Claude more in my personal life, just pick one thing and just get used to it and learn it and enjoy it and see what's working for you, and then go from there. Just don't overthink it, and pick one project, one pain point that one of your teams has, especially if it's something that that interfaces with multiple departments. Security deposits was a great one because it was an on-site thing and a corporate thing that we were trying to solve for. But just pick one thing and start there, and it'll grow. It'll grow kind of naturally from there.
I would say for me, processes. Really focus on your internal processes and make sure that they're, airtight as much as they can be, to be able to then get that buy-in and make your centralization successful. I do want to just kind of piggyback of what Jackie just mentioned about promoting within. Actually, that we're talking about it now, knowing what we went through, I think that's a great idea. And knowing what I know now, having done the centralization one way or another, piece by piece, I think it's very important to start. I think that is a recipe for success.
Yeah, you'll have a waiting list.
No, that's actually, I really, really like that. I think that's actually very, very beneficial.
For sure.
Yeah, I'd say if you're trying to centralize on the AI side, meaning bring in a team of AI workers that can help with things we've talked about, leasing, operations, delinquency, start with centralized data. So where are all of your operating procedures? Where is your knowledge base? What is your pet policy? Get that all in one place. And then when you're looking for a vendor, pilot different vendors. There's a lot of vendors out there as well. And this probably goes against my interests of saying this, but you can drive people's prices down by saying that you have another vendor that's offering the same thing. You can compare the way the AI sound, the way the AI feels by comparing different vendors. And I think prop tech is in this really unique place where there's now so many people that can serve you, and technology has really started to enter the industry. So take your data, bring it to whichever vendor, pitch vendors against each other, and then get what's best for you and your operations, and find a team that really cares and can work with you on it.
And Jackie?
Mine would be set extreme clarity, because I don't know about you guys, but this is what happens. What happened there? And they don't want to take responsibility. So we spent a lot of time really because we were using people, that piece of it. And we spent a lot of time really defining the role. They have to check, sign off on what the centralized is going to be doing, what the property manager is going to be doing, so that there is defined clarity. That was a big thing for us. So I think, on top of your procedures, clarity is really good. And then to your point, beta small, so you can fail forward. That's what the beta test is all about. What's working, what's not, how can we improve it? So beta small to fail forward would be my next thing.
Right. And for me, I think, Maja, what you had mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, right, bringing people in early at all levels. So we're feeling, hey, this is an organizational effort. This is an important thing. And you want to have all levels of folks
Absolutely.
Involved.
I have to say that has been tremendously important for us, because if you don't have those people together and they're buying, you're going to fail for sure, at least at the first try.
Right. Well, please join me in thanking our panelists. Great job.